What's up, everybody? Hope you're all doing well out there, and welcome to episode number 101 of Sports and Torts. We are fresh off of milestone week last week, celebrating the 100th episode of the podcast. And so now let's start century number two. With any luck, we'll get to 200. So we're going to start off with a bang. We have a very unique episode today and a great guest for you all. His name is Travis Apple, coming to us live from Nashville, Tennessee. Travis is the Chief Revenue Officer for a company called Logitix. Travis has spent his whole life working in the sports industry, so we look forward to some really good and unique stuff from him today about the sports world. So, Travis, I appreciate you being here on today. How we doing?
Joshua, thank you so much. I'm doing well. First and foremost, congratulations on the 100th episode. We'll get to it. I just recently crossed over 200 episodes, so I know you've got it in you, but I remember those milestones. Those are always fun and exciting. So kudos and congrats. And obviously, I'm sure appreciative of all your listeners. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So you're my hero. If you're at 200, getting to 100 it's fun. I mean, you don't
Yeah.
do it if you don't enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a passion, right? And I think, I always kind of joke, like I'll keep doing it, until I get my Joe Rogan Spotify deal.
When's that coming? How do we get one of those?
Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be nice, but man, I enjoy getting a chance to meet and talk to people like you. Other than having the podcast, this wouldn't have happened. So it's just so unique to meet people, and it's very special.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thanks for having me, and I'm excited for our conversation today.
So I told you that Nashville is my number two city to live in. I'm from Atlanta, always lived in Atlanta. But if I didn't live in Atlanta, I'd be in Nashville. Is it as great as everybody seems, as it sounds, and when I visit there?
It is. I've only been here just over 2 years, but love it. Certainly a great, diversity of people, culture, restaurants, bars, like things to do. And Nashville is continuing to grow. Even from where I'm at when I first moved here to now, like it just seems like every day there's new condos, new apartments, new restaurants, new commercial real estate coming into town. But a fun place. Transparently, I moved here from Miami, Florida, and I'm more of a warm weather, 12 months a year. I don't care about the seasons, and so I have to deal with some seasons. But the city itself it'll work.
Country music fan?
I am. That's one of the best parts about it, right? Damn near every country music star will come through here. Hell, half of them live here. So between that and then, just the vibe in Nashville, it's like you go to any bar, there's live music and they're up and comers, but there's a reason they're on stage. They're pretty good. So it's certainly an exciting time.
So we'll jump ahead real quick about what Logitix does with ticketing, but Morgan Wallen was recently in Atlanta, and my God, that was a tough ticket to get for me and my daughter.
Yep, exactly. And they're coming. My wife actually works at Nissan Stadium and the Tennessee Titans, and so they've got several shows coming up here in May. So yeah, it's the demand for live events is crazy right now, and you see that you went through and you're still going through the Swiftie world, but yeah, Morgan Wallen when he sang the '98 Braves at Truist Park, like that was a pretty impressive feat.
Yeah, that was awesome. So Logitix, I've seen two kind of, I'll call them taglines. That's probably not the right word, but just descriptions of your company. One of them says that Logitix is your ticketing connector, and the other one I saw is that it provides ticketing technology that draws a crowd. Is that pretty accurate about what Logitix does?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly accurate. And I guess, if it wasn't accurate, I'd probably be getting, punished from work, because we put those out there. But, and I guess going back, and I know we'll get back into some of the history of my career, I was a client of Logitix, and previously Dynasty Sports and Entertainment, on the team side, which is where I fell in love with them. And as I was doing some consulting and recruiting for them, it just made a ton of sense for me to join just over 7 months ago. And, as I look at it, and what I always tell people, quote unquote, the elevator pitch is, we feel like we have sophisticated people, technology, process, and strategy to truly maximize revenue and increase attendance, and or sell through. And, as you think about it, and I always kind of joke, if you go to the owner and say, hey, it's a Thursday game, what's most important? Is it volume or yield? The answer is going to be both. And we feel like we have that sophisticated people and technology to truly do that, and to truly, again, maximize revenue and increase sell through.
That's good stuff, and I'm excited to dig into that with you. But before we do that, just introduce yourself, your background. You touched a little bit about what you've done, but just who is Travis Apple?
Yeah, so Travis Apple I was born in a small kind of farm town in Ohio. Went to college at what I always like to joke called the Harvard of Ohio, Ashland University. And the main reason I went to that school was they had this program called sports communication. And at the time, if you think back 20 years ago, there wasn't a ton of sports management majors. Nobody really knew what this business existed. And throughout college, I ended up triple majoring in sports communication, journalism, and electronic media production. I was doing a lot of newspaper writing. I was the editor of our newspaper, host of our TV show, host of a radio show. And through that, ended up getting an internship back. And I always kind of joke back when interns, didn't get paid. There's an unpaid internship, which is unheard of. And it was at a racetrack. I knew nothing about racing. So the passion for that, I always had a passion for sports, but knew nothing about racing. And I was PA announcing and writing press releases. And one day my boss came to me and said, "Do you want to make some money?" I'm a college kid, of course. What can I do? And they're like, "Can you sell these trackside banners?" And they're $1,000 a trackside banner. He's like, "I'll pay you 10%. And I was like, I'm not a math major, but I realized that's $100. And back in the day, that's 10 cases of Keystone. I was like, I'm in. And no training. I just started going door to door to businesses in the area and had some success and realized, you know what, I kind of have a passion for sales. And transparently, I wasn't in the place in my life, both financially or mentally, to say, let's change my major and like let's figure this out. I'm like, I'm going down the road on 3 majors. I just want to get a job when I graduate and let's go. And so I knew, kind of come my senior year, I was selling kitchens, windows, and gutter caps door to door as well. That sales is what I wanted to do. And, lo and behold, it was time for me to get out of Ohio. I wanted to move. And so kind of on a whim, I decided to say, you know what, I should move to Atlanta. And I started just looking up like, all right, sports teams. Found a job with the Atlanta Hawks and the then Thrashers, which I kind of joke, you being an Atlanta native, you remember them, but there are sometimes I talk and they're like, who? And it's like, well, it's the Winnipeg Jets. I applied and then I made a couple cold calls and basically I think bothered the person, Corey Breton, who's a great mentor and friend of mine today, enough to give me a shot. And, kind of the rest was history.
Yeah, that's great. I had to chuckle. You mentioned Keystone, a case of Keystone. My go-to when I make those kind of analogies, which are great, by the way, I always go with Stroh's.
Stroh's, yeah.
The Firebird Stroh's, but Keystone's right there too.
Yeah,
So,
they're all right there. And it's one of those things like you just hope you never have to drink again.
Never have, yeah. So, and I'm sorry to go off topic, but Bush Beer was in that same category to me, like never drink it again. They have a peach flavor that's out now. That's great, lake beer.
Interesting.
It's actually pretty good, but and we digress. So
right, yeah. It's easy to digress over beer.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, working in, I mean, I called it the sporting industry, but I guess it's really the entertainment industry you're in now because ticketing can be the concerts, like we said. Is that something that, I mean, you kind of touched on it, but were you a sports guy growing up and like wanted to work in the sports industry, or is it just kind of how the cards fell?
Yeah, always had a passion for sports, played sports throughout my entire life. And, again, I got to college and, was able to make some money by broadcasting, being the play-by-play announcer of our college, football and basketball games. But all along in college, I was like, oh, I want to be, on TV. I want to be on ESPN. And, I probably had some friends back in the day that I said I had a face for radio and I really didn't want to be on radio. So, through internships, fell in love with the opportunity of sales, really fell in love with the opportunity to like control my own destiny. Right. What I mean by that, both career-wise, financial-wise, and I just knew that, I've always been a work ethic person, which we'll get into. Like that's the kind of theme of my career and my life is hustle and effort. And I just knew with sales, like I can make more calls, I can set more meetings, I can make more sales, which ultimately makes more money, which can help, kind of catapult me in my career. And it's been, been very beneficial. And, I've worked for a lot of great places, throughout my career. I started my career with the Atlanta Hawks and Thrashers, moved into a leadership role with the Pittsburgh Pirates, then to the Orlando Magic, the Phoenix Suns and Mercury and Rattlers, to the NBA league office, to the Miami Marlins, opened my own company in consulting and sales training and merged with another great company in GSW in the same realm. And, before joining Logitix, and I've been very fortunate to be around a lot of really good people that have taught me a lot and have, I think put myself in a good position to, one, live in a lot of really cool places, have a lot of really cool opportunities and learn from some of the industry's best that's out there.
Such cool experiences. And so when you work from the multiple franchises like you have, and you don't need to identify which one specifically, but do you see different franchises run better than others, which then equate to better success on the field?
Yeah, it's
Work.
something I've always told people, like, people lead. Money, title, and responsibility always follow if you surround yourself with the right people. And I think it's very important. And advice I always give is make sure you're taking the opportunity for the right reasons. And so if you think about, like, I grew up, fans of teams that I've never worked for. And I often think to myself, and I don't know if I'd ever want to work for that team. And maybe it's not the right people. Maybe it's because I have too much of a passion for that team that I may have blinders on at all times. And so I think it's very important because, and as I've traveled around, yeah, you certainly see organizations like any other industry that are run better than others, or organizations that are more innovative, organizations that maybe hold their people more accountable, organizations that think about strategy and different things to really execute at the highest level and build a scalable and sustainable organization.
Got it. So the ticketing aspect of it, was that a portion of the jobs with these franchises that you always kind of worked in, or is that part of what you've done? Like, how did you get to the
Yeah,
part?
it's a funny story. I drove down to Atlanta while I was in college to interview. And I'll never forget it. I got a call on a Wednesday after, again, I bothered Corey a couple times and followed up. He's like, "Look, we have an interview on Friday if you can make it." And I didn't have enough money to buy a plane ticket, and I didn't think twice about it. So, all right, let's drive. Let's drive. And I drove down, got there late Thursday night, Friday morning, went in and interviewed in person. And I think from that perspective, like, I was driving back and I didn't tell anybody I was going down there because I was a little nervous and I didn't want to, like, what if I don't get it? And I'll never forget, I was driving back and I called my grandma and I was like, "Grandma, I just got offered a job in Atlanta. Like, I'm going to move to Atlanta." And she was like, "Excuse me?" Like, she was upset. She was mad. Why? I'm like, "Oh, I got a job with the Atlanta Hawks and Thrashers." And she wasn't a huge sports fan, but she's like, "There's sports teams in Cleveland. There's sports teams in Ohio. Why can't you stay here?" And I was like, "No, it's a great opportunity. It's be fun." And still to that second, I don't think I knew what I was getting into. It was like selling tickets. And now I joke, I've been in the business for 16, 17 years, and I still think I have friends and family that have no idea what I do. Because it's evolved a lot. But yes, I got my start in ticketing, a program called Inside Sales. It was $8 an hour, 7.5% commission. It was a 9-month program, and it was sink or swim. You either made it or you didn't. And so I knew going in that, like, I had to find a way. And then the rest was history. I was able to have success and surround myself with good people to help put me in a good spot. Ultimately got into leadership and leading teams and leading people. And so ticketing has always been, a big part of it. And ticketing expands so big, right? You've got your individual tickets, you have group tickets, so, of 10 tickets or more to a church group. You have premium, you have B2B sales, B2C sales. So a variety of that.
So much to manage, so much to handle. You mentioned yield and you mentioned volume. Now, do you mean, well, tell me what you mean by those two words specifically as it relates to an owner or organization's goals with filling up
So
seat.
say you're working in an arena and they have 18,000 seats, for arena sports, or of the Big Five, NHL and NBA. There will, let's say it's the opening game and it's a big opponent. Hey, it's going to be easily to do both, because it's like, hey, I think we can sell out all 18,000 seats, and then how do we dynamically price? How do we variable price? How do we figure out to make the most money? But we all know a lot of teams out there, a lot of sporting teams, don't sell out a ton of games, and certainly not every game. And, I kind of joke, like, going back to, like, my baseball days, there was, several times an opening day in Pittsburgh that it was snowing and you had to fill 40,000 seats. Well, then when you're in April and it's still 35 degrees on a Tuesday versus a not top tier opponent, it's gonna be hard to sell. And so you've got to understand that volume and yield. Like, what is that exact price point that somebody is willing to buy and show up, versus what is that price point that's like, nope, I'm not going to sit out there in the cold, or I'm not going to go to this Tuesday game, I'll wait to some other game. And so I think that's the just to, kind of juggling every time you have to understand that is like, there is that specific price point that people are willing to buy. And on the flip side, right? There are times that if it's a Tuesday and early season game, no matter what sport, you know what? You may say, I'll give you a free ticket, and you still may not have enough people to come. So what is that actual price point that helps get cheeks and seats, that raises your per cap, that you can then take that lead and lead nurture it to grow it into a much larger account?
Cheeks and seats. I like that. What about adding like promotional events, like a bobblehead night or
Yep.
whatever it might be? I mean, what's the thinking to do something like that to increase volume?
Exactly. I mean, exactly what it is, right? When people hear of bobblehead nights or firework nights or t-shirt giveaways, it's an added value. And so as teams become more and more sophisticated, you're also understanding the added value of what you can do for pricing. If you tie a fireworks night or a bobblehead night, that game, all be maybe not the best opponent they're playing, or maybe not a big name individual player coming in. But if you tie it to a bobblehead night, the perceived value is a lot higher. So you could take that same Tuesday game, if you don't have a bobblehead, it might be on average a 10-12% price increase because the bobblehead adds value to it.
So
So
I was just
that's why teams are going to do promotions. And then I've always went by the word, especially in baseball and NBA, because you have so many games, 44 or 81 games, NHL as well. Like, you want to kind of peak on peak strategy. So that's why you'll see in a baseball, for example, most of your giveaways or your promotions are going to be on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, because putting that bobblehead on a Tuesday still may not move the needle as much as if you put it on a Friday or Saturday. That'll move the needle. That'll gain incremental dollar and incremental value.
you read my mind, because that's what I was going to ask. Is it I'll use an Atlanta, is it Tuesday versus the Marlins that we want to drop this bobblehead, or is it Friday when we already got some something going on, and let's just double down on it? Sounds like it's the latter.
It's like the supply and demand of anything out there, right? Is if to that point, if you have the Marlins coming in town, on a Tuesday, hey, we throw a bobblehead, it may get us 2,000 more seats sold at, let's call it, an ATP of $25. We tie it to a Saturday, even if it is the Marlins, doesn't matter the opponent. If we tie it to a Saturday where people have the more propensity to come out, to buy, they have more free time on a Saturday, that may sell 10,000 more tickets, and the ATP may be $28 or $30. Now all of a sudden you're looking at that substantial growth in income. And
Yeah, that makes sense.
anything we do in business, what I always say is, just as much as the ROI, the return on investment, is important, what I think equally as important is actually return on energy. What are you putting your energy and effort that comes from internally and externally, as you think about that, what's the energy and what is the ultimate follow through? Like, you can put a lot of marketing assets and dollars and a lot of sales performance and opportunities to try to sell that Tuesday game out, but you're spinning your wheels at times. If you put that same amount of effort into a Saturday, that's where you'll grow a lot more revenue.
So at the end of the day, are y'all seeing that the franchises, teams that have the better product on the field I mean, this may sound stupid, but that's an easier sell than a less successful product, but the amenities are through the roof. Like the park is great, and the
Yeah.
seating is great, and the amenities are great.
It's an interesting question, right? And I'll kind of answer it twofold. One, certainly, right? If a team is much better, or is playing really well, or competing for the playoffs or championship, you're going to drive up, that kind of organic interest. The challenge with that is, at times when those are all your fan base, it's not very scalable or sustainable, because all of a sudden, if next year the team sucks, you're going to lose kind of those, lack of a better term, right, bandwagon fans.
Right.
And so, I always kind of take pride, and I've told a lot of people this, like, I take pride that I have a 330 winning percentage in my career. I've made the playoffs once, and I have 0 rings to show for it. But I can now say, hey, I've sold teams that have mathematically been eliminated by the All-Star game. I have lost more than 100 games, multiple seasons. Like, and it's like, you know what? You can still find a way to have success with those. So yeah, certainly, like, teams are good. You're going to drive crowd, But, what really drives long-term fan base is, getting youth involved, is the season tickets, in multiple games where it's not, you're just relying on, because there are teams that have had a lot of success on the field and then they just rely on, I need to sell 10, 15,000 single game tickets every game. That's not very scalable or sustainable.
Yeah, so your answer to my question really should be a huge feather in your cap, because you recognize that you have not had those great successes on the field and still have been successful with your sales. I think that's great. So I'm a season ticket holder of the Braves, and we're in the preferred, I think they call it preferred seating section, whatever that is. And they focus a lot on, like, parking is a huge deal, ingress, egress, separate exits in and out of our seats is a big deal. Dedicated places to get food and drinks a big deal. They load some money on our tickets. Like, all that stuff is of huge value to me as a consumer, that over the years I have noticed more import has been placed on things like that.
Yeah, it is, and because it goes back to that value proposition, right? And it also goes back, and Atlanta's in your backyard there with a new ballpark in the Battery. It's turning into a destination where now it's not just you're going to a baseball game. It's your point of like added value or loaded value credit. Now it's kind of that street to seat experience. The time you walk in, at that time with loaded value, maybe everything else is taken care of. You don't even have to, as long as you have enough gas in your car, everything else is taken care of when you get down to the ballpark. And so those are always added values. That's why you'll see, we talked about promotional nights or giveaways or theme nights, to drive new potential audiences that want to rally together and enjoy an outing. And that's what live entertainment in general is. Doesn't matter what sport, doesn't matter what event, whether it be concert, performing arts, a sport, live event entertainment is based on discretionary dollar or entertainment budget, right? Unfortunately, and I've tried for years to figure out, how can I tell somebody this is a need, that they need to come out or their business is going to fail or their family is going to fail? It's not. But people enjoy, the reason live entertainment is so big and there's so much money that runs through the pipes of live entertainment is because people enjoy it. And so as you think about the enjoyment factor, the amount of time when I was on the team side, sitting in meetings and trying to identify the personas of customers and what they like, what they don't like, what would intrigue them to spend a little bit more. And you think about the per cap, and you think about what can we do to get that person to come to 1 to 3 games, because then the next year maybe they come to 7, the next year they come to 10, and by the time 5 years come around, maybe there are new season ticket holders and they're raising their kids to be a fan of the team. That's where that long-term growth of a live entertainment entity comes full circle.
So enter Logitix. We talked a lot about what you've done in your background. What is Logitix doing? What are they serving to carry out, what you just said as the goals?
Yeah, to your point, I think the easiest answer is like that ticket connector, right? That you mentioned with Logitech. Like, we are the ones connecting. One thing I always say, and I said this when I was on the team and venue side, and I say this now in the Logitech chair, is you want to fish where your fish are. And so what I mean by that is, like, I drink a lot of Powerade, but I know I can go to the grocery market, I can go to a convenience store, I could go to a drugstore, I could go to a drive-through, I could go to a fast food restaurant to get my Powerade. So why not, in the same with tickets, put tickets on shelves where people are? And I think that's what Logitech comes in, is we have that sophisticated technology and strategy to have your inventory out in multiple different channels where you never know. Like, we have some venues that have started to utilize us. They've seen 80% of buyers of their inventory are brand new to their database. And so you think about how much they've been missing out prior to that. Is if you only have your ticket for sale on your primary, you're potentially missing out on a lot of potential buyers. Now, are those buyers full season ticket holders? You don't know. You've never had them. But, I'm sure you've bought a ticket at some point in time off of secondary market. Well, then guess what? They now geo-target you, right? There's not a morning that I don't wake up that I'm getting several emails of like, here's what's happening in Nashville. Here's what this event, here's this concert, here's this show. I may have never been, but it may catch my eye one time and be like, hey, that's it's not a bad idea. I should go. And now that can be a brand new lead to the database. And you think about it on the other side as a live event venue. Now I've got a brand new person experiencing my product that I can now lead nurture, that I can try to grow into a much larger account.
Smart. So I'll give you an example, sticking with the country music theme. So my daughter's also a Luke Bryan fan. And so he's someone on Spotify who we listen to a bunch and on Pandora. And he's coming to Atlanta in August. And I got an email from Spotify that was essentially saying Luke Bryan is coming August 23rd to Truist Park. The day before, here's your code to get, access
Still
early.
access. Yep.
And I'm like, well, hell yeah, that's pretty cool. So
Right.
sure enough, man, I went the morning of, clicked whatever the Spotify code was, boom, right then and there. I sent it to 5 friends, boom, they're using it. So I guess that's exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. Because to that point, right? Like even your friends may have never thought about it, but then all of a sudden you get that push and you're like, hey, because people love going to live events with their friends and family. I always kind of use the example of like you want to fill the bar, like when you're on a venue side, like who wants to go drink at an empty bar? You want to go to a bar where there's, maybe it's not crazy, right? But like you want to go to a bar with other people and you want to go to a bar with friends and family and like socialize with your loved ones. And so that's exactly what, that kind of triggers as a full circle.
Cool. So when you say dynamic pricing, is that the fluctuating price up and down based on supply and demand?
Correct. Yep. So, there's, for a while now, live events have been doing variable pricing, which what variable pricing is the time a schedule of events comes out. If it's a sporting event, it's the easiest way to describe it, right? This Tuesday game is this price, but the Saturday game is probably going to be a little higher. And then versus a premium opponent might be here. So it's kind of tiered variable pricing. Dynamic pricing is, and that's where Logitix comes in hand, is we can dynamically price down a section, row, and even seat. We can find ways, and if there's the appetite and the opportunity to charge more for an aisle seat versus middle of the row. But yes, it's all supply and demand, and so you see the value and kind of the upside and the upward mobility on a consistent basis. And look, dynamic pricing goes both ways, right? It can go down, it can go up. That's where, from a Logitix chair, we're always working directly with our partners to understand what's most important to them. What is their value proposition? Is it, hey, and we have partners that'll change up their strategies event by event. Some events, it's like, we just need to fill the bowl. We need to fill it up, cheeks and seats, because we know this will help our per cap. Others, it's like, you know what? We want to make sure that we really focus and build like price integrity. So we don't want to go lower than this, but this is an opportunity we can grow it more. And I use the example, like when I was at the Miami Marlins, there's a Tuesday game. You know what? I'm probably going to like go a little bit lower than season ticket or value out in the outfield seats, because I just need cheeks and seats. But when the New York Mets came in town on a weekend in June and I had these seats above the Mets dugout, I could probably put them at about $100. At face value. Any more than that, I might have a PR backlash. But people were buying them on the secondary for 150, $160. So now that's an opportunity for me to maximize my revenue.
So are you talking about pricing, dynamic pricing on the secondary market, StubHub, those type places, or just directly from the?
But I mean, the easiest answer is both. Because we have such great partnerships that we can assist and show them the data and the insights of like, here's what the ticket's actually valued at. Versus, and here's what people in the secondary are paying. And we have entities out there that'll release inventory out on the secondary prior to them going on sale on the primary to help set that price, to help better understand what that looks like.
All right. So here's my most important question of the day, and probably the question you get asked the most. I'm going to give it to you as an example. So I'm a Georgia Bulldog fan as well. Over the last 5 years, we've had amazing success with our football program. I spent more money than I want to admit on going to these games. It's crazy. Well, I mean, the amount that they're charging is crazy in the secondary market. Every time me and my friends, we discuss when is the best time to buy the ticket. Is it a couple of days before, a week before, day of? And we've gone round and round without an answer. Do you got one for me?
I think you hit the nail on the head. There's not really an answer, because what ends up happening, you hear a lot of people like, I'm going to wait till the last minute. But then guess what comes up? I get shitty seats, or I can't buy the location I want. Or there are times that event, goes haywire, right? Like, you wait and it's 3 days before, 72 hours before, and that ticket is $100. Then all of a sudden, given supply and demand, the last minute turns into 250. I would say if you're going to be out there, and how I've looked at it, if you're going to buy inventory consistently at a variety of events, I think in the long term, you will save money if you buy in advance. And when I say in advance, like 2 to 3 months in advance, because then typically by then you won't get that spike where it's like there's so many people buying that the price is so high. Look, you're gonna lose. Like, the one thing I would always encourage anybody that ever buys a ticket, don't look after you buy it. Don't start looking at
Don't go
pricing,
back
because
and look.
you're gonna stress yourself out. And again, I don't have any data behind it. Because again, there's probably data that could show either way, right? There's probably data that shows you wait till the last minute within 24 hours, you're always going to get on average a cheaper ticket. But there's also data that shows that like that within 24 hours, you're probably paying more as well. So my recommendation is always, if you know you're going to that event, go buy it. Now, if you are a person that's like, I like live entertainment, I'm just going to kind of wait till last minute and I have my threshold, of pricing that I want to pay, then yeah, it's fine to wait to the last minute, because then you may say, you know what, that's over my threshold. It's not worth me going.
Yeah, very very well put. I find value in having the ticket in my possession and not worrying about it. So I probably
Yep.
purchase a little bit earlier than others because I just don't want to worry about it. But
Yep.
I'm just what you said. I will not go check again what that price went to. Once I've bought it,
Right.
that's it. I've
You're
got some
stressing
friends,
yourself
man.
out then.
I've got some friends that we will have traveled to Los Angeles. We will travel to Indianapolis for these games, and they're waiting till the day of, or the morning of, as we're walking to the stadium to like refresh. I'm like, dude, you're playing a dangerous game. They've
Yep.
won some, they've lost some, but that's just not for me.
Right.
Um, so I don't know, but are you? So we look again with Georgia, like the SEC games, the price is out of control. If you compare it to the ACC or Pac-10 or other conferences, again, that's just a function of supply and demand, right? I mean, those other conferences would love to sell the prices that they're getting for the SEC, they just can't.
Right.
And so
Exactly.
they're just honest with themselves about what people are going to pay to go.
And I think that's the biggest thing is, even from a Logitix hat on, when we partner with people, we want to like be very detailed and clear. Like, cause yeah, everybody says, oh, I want my ticket to sell at face value, or my average ticket price is 70, but I want to make sure I sell everything at 100. There's, again, that between that supply and demand, there's a realistic price point that people are willing to buy. And that's where I think you see, and that's what we certainly bring to our partnerships and to the table, is that we understand based on data, but also just experience in the markets of where that price point is, that, hey, we're not leaving any money on the table, but we're also not getting people to come to that, see the price and run.
Right.
We want to find that ideal transactional price point.
So to a company like Logitix, this stuff doesn't just happen. I mean, y'all got a big volume of folks, a big leadership team that every day are working strictly on this. Like, what kind of setup does the company have?
Yeah, so we really are structured similar to, honestly, a lot of sports teams. Where we've got our revenue verticals, that we've got biz dev and partnership and pricing and marketing, and different specific verticals such as music and performing arts. And we have a data and analytics team, we have a technology team, we've got our finance and accounting team, we've got our operations and distribution team as well. So we really are try to structure very similar to any organization. We're about 100 total people, just over 100, with about 60 people really focusing on kind of revenue and direct customer support.
And I know y'all are big into using, most up-to-date technology. Is that some AI functions that are controlling like software inputs? I'm using the
Yeah.
wrong words, but are controlling kind of price fluctuation?
Yeah, what I always say is like we have man and machine. And why I think that's important is like because there's, the AI is so important, right? And it's so, prevalent in today's world, but AI can't always track things. Like AI can't necessarily track when, the weather is all of a sudden going to be, looking at the weather report, it's going to be rough. Like that's a machine, that's a man, that's a gut tell you. And so we do a little bit of both. We've got automation. We have, past data that can help us price the inventory to that appropriate price. but also it's our conversations. If we're partnering with somebody and they say, hey, we're about ready to release another bobblehead night, AI is not going to know that. The machine's not going to know that. But if we don't turn that lever, we're going to lose a lot of incremental dollars as well.
Totally. And I get the sense that you're a face-to-face kind of guy. I mean, you use the
Yep.
word hustle in the beginning. I see the book behind you, hustle, your podcast has word hustle. You're just one of, yeah, that's who you are, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think it's something I was ingrained in me early on in life that, hey, I may not be the biggest, the smartest, the most athletic, but, find a way to compete. And I think that's the beauty. I always tell people, and I've been fortunate to hire a lot of people. I had a recruiting company that was hiring a lot of people for everybody. And, I always said there's three things I always look for. It's passion. You got to have a passion and desire to for your brand, to build your craft, a passion for the industry, and a passion for what you're doing. You have to have a work ethic, which again is hustle tied to it. I always say, are you willing to go above and beyond the Call of Duty and not the video game? The true Call of Duty in every step of the way, no matter what role or responsibilities you have. And then the third one is, are you coachable? We're in we just talked about ticket pricing. Like, 10 years ago, there wasn't really dynamic pricing. 20 years ago, there wasn't variable pricing. And so our business, our marketplace, our world continues to evolve. So are you coachable? Are you open to learn, open to adapt? And what I always say, those three things have in common: passion, work ethic, and coachability. The only person that can control them is you. You might surround yourself with the best leaders and the best people. They can't teach you to smile. They can't teach you to work your ass off. And they can't teach you to actually listen and apply it to your day. I'm a firm believer good things happen to good people if you put yourself in a good position. So if you can bring a passion every day, a work ethic every day, and an open mind to learn, you will be successful, period, point blank.
Amen. Co-sign. So your podcast is called 52 Weeks of Hustle. And is that what the podcast is about? Kind of what you just talked about?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. We talk about the value of people. One of my first roles, in college in Atlanta, the CEO was a guy named Dr. Bernie Moland. And, Bernie on our first day came down and kind of preached the choir and, hey, we're happy to have you part of the organization. And right at the end, he goes, hey, if there's anything I can do, you know, don't feel free to reach out. So maybe I was naive, maybe I was crazy, maybe I was dumb, but that night I sent him an email. I'm a 21-year-old kid, like, hey, Bernie, I would love to grab lunch and pick your brain. And, fast forward a week later, and he didn't have to respond. He didn't have to say that. Him and I went to lunch, so I'm a lonely inside sales rep that might not even be there in 9 months. He's a CEO of a massive company and multiple teams and properties. And he gave me the time of day. And I was fast forward, I was having lunch with him in February of 2020. So right before our world shut down. I said, Bernie, I've been thinking about hosting a podcast, thinking about calling it 52 Weeks Hustle, where I just sit down with industry leaders. Like, absolutely, it's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you? Like, you have so much contacts, and it's great content. And then fast forward, it turned out perfect timing, right? The world shut down. People were looking for content. And Bernie was one of my first guests on there. And, I always look back at the 52 Weeks Hustle. I sit down with a brand new industry leader each week in a variety of live entertainment and a variety of roles to talk about their career, their path, provide advice, both for people that want to get in the business or people that are getting in this business. And yeah, a lot of it ties to, are you willing to take some risks? Are you willing to work your tail off, and are you willing to coachable? So yeah, it all kind of ties in that, the biggest, benefit, probably similar to you, right? You just mentioned you crossed over 100, and it was like, it's been fun to have really cool guests, but also it's fun. Like, you'll randomly get a note on LinkedIn, like, hey, thanks for doing this podcast. I listened to this episode, and when I went in the interview, it helped me because I knew something about that individual. So it's just been fun. I feel like this business has given so much to me that the least I can do is give back. And so give back with some time and some very impressive industry leaders to share their advice as well.
So our stories are very similar about kind of how I look at the podcast, how I started it, why I started it, what I've gotten out of it. You do it weekly, so you're at 200. Have you kept that up? I mean, every single week, keeping
Yep.
it, doing, because it can be difficult sometimes.
It can be difficult, but yes, I'm very fortunate that and as you probably know, right, I've gotten a little bit better. Even from a timing end, the first season, it was, hour and a half long episodes, and it would take me 10, 12 hours to do. I've gotten better at editing. I've gotten better at preparing questions. I've gotten better at, from a time commitment, on understanding the process. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And, as you know, right? Like, you couldn't keep doing it if you didn't have the right guests, the right people, certainly the right audience. If I looked at my data and I had 10 people listening, might be like, you know what, this probably isn't worth my time either.
Right.
But it's been a lot of fun, and I can't thank, obviously, most importantly, the guest and the audience that tune in.
So the timing part's funny. I apologize before we started because mine are about twice as long as what yours usually are. You get right to it, man. What 24 minutes is what you shoot for, right?
Yeah, that's why I try, kind of try the theme of a 24-second shot clock. And a lot of it is just, how can I be, a little shorter, sweeter, to the point, but also like understanding, average commute time and things like that. So, but it's been great. I have nothing to complain about it. I've been very fortunate. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing it. But your point, it's definitely a time commitment. There are times that, I'm taping on a Friday night, and, Saturday mornings, I may want to do something else, but it's like, well, we got to go edit this episode. It's coming out, but I'm glad people appreciate and enjoy it.
It's funny you brought up the commute time because that's something that I think about a lot. I think the average commute is 22 minutes. At least that's what it was a
Yep.
couple of years ago when I looked it up. And so they say that that's a good way to gauge how long a podcast should be. People pop it in when they get to work and they're done. I guess I'm
Right.
so narcissistic that I just assume on their drive home, they will listen to it as well.
They'll tune back in.
But
Well, as long
again,
as
yes,
it's
I'm
an
like, all right, I'll
exciting
do 20.
episode, I'm sure they will. So
Yes,
hopefully
I'll
you'll
do
see the data on this one that they'll keep going, and it doesn't just decline after 10 minutes.
correct. So I'm like, I'll do 22 times two. I'll show you guys.
Yeah.
And you're an author too, man. I mean, writing books. I got time to do all that. It's
Yeah, I
great.
mean, again, it probably comes down to effort. I try to be as efficient and effective as I can in everything I do. A lot of my friends, they know I don't sleep much, and so I probably find more hours in the day than a lot of people do. But the same thing with the book. It was always. And I shared the story. I got in this business. I had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't even know this business existed. And I felt like there was an opportunity for me, because of my experiences in relationships with a lot of people in this industry. I could really build a blueprint. And so a couple years ago, I released a book called Hustle Your Way to Success in Sports Sales. And it really goes from kind of the interview process and what questions to ask for, how do you build out your resume, to your onboarding, to your initial steps. And it's been a lot of fun. And I've got quite a few teams that when they hire brand new people, they utilize it as their onboarding book. I've got quite a few colleges that utilize it as part of their curriculum, which is great. And I think most importantly, like, being able to get the feedback from people that are like, hey, I read it and I realized sales wasn't for me. Because I'm, as you probably heard through this podcast, I'm certainly a transparent person. Like, I didn't beat around the bush. Like, this business is hard. It's a grind. It's difficult. And so I shared that. So those are probably some of the best when they call me like, I appreciate your book. And I realized, like, I don't want to do sales. Great. Because you want to do what you're passionate about. And then on the flip side, having people come to me and say, hey, I read the book and it certainly helped me land a dream job, or help reiterate what my amazing leadership group has already taught me, to be success. And that's why I always say, even at the bottom of the book, it's a blueprint to be successful in this industry.
So I really enjoy writing. I've never written a book, never written anything more than just, so many pages. What's the blueprint? Because I've sat down and thought about it and wanted to do it and have goals to do it. What's the blueprint to just get started and be successful with it?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit it's taking a risk, but also understanding that it's going to be difficult, right? Because no different than we joked about the podcast. Like, I don't have the Joe Rogan deal. Like, I don't have this. Like, I won awards on the book, and I've got a hell of a lot more people that have ever bought it than I would ever dreamed of. But it was a challenging process. One, because you have all these thoughts in your head, but you don't want to launch a 1,000-page book. And so it's like, how do you condense it? Then from the perspective, like, some of the unique things going through of writing a book is obviously condensing it and understanding, like, what are those key values that people are going to take away. But also then when it gets to publishing and editing, like, I had to hire an editor. I was literally like going through and searching, like, what questions should I ask? Then to write a cover, you're hiring, a copywriter and an editor on that. And it's like, what questions do I ask this person? And then I went down the road, I talked to several publishing companies, and ultimately I decided to do a self-publishing. Well, then there's challenges with self-publishing because it's kind of all on your end. And I had some fun and interesting learning experiences, even I self-published through Amazon. And as big as Amazon is, they're beasts, and it's been great. They were a little bit of a pain to deal with at times. And they would make decisions on their own end without ever telling you. You just had to live with it. And so, there's some steps along the way. I would encourage anyone that's thinking about writing a book, feel free to reach out to me. I can tell you all the good, bad, and the ugly. It's certainly rewarding. I've enjoyed it. Again, more people have read it than I would ever dreamed of, and I appreciate all the support and feedback. But it's a challenge. It's going to take some time. Probably the biggest, I would say, thinking back to that time, it was probably the first time my copywriter came back to me with edits. It was kind of a kick in the gut a little bit, because it was like, wait, it was that bad? Like, basically is how I viewed it.
Red ink everywhere.
Yeah, it's like you think about those lawyer agreements have red lines everywhere, right? It's like,
Yeah.
that's a lot of red lines. And then you start looking through and you're like, wait, it's actually more just positioning, as opposed to like it was so bad, whether it be grammar or so much content that didn't make sense. But yeah, it was certainly fun and exciting. And again, I can't thank everybody that has bought it. Another cool thing about it is part of my editing process, I went through and I did a video audio version of it. And so now it's available via audio, but that was fun. And so, every once in a while I'll have some of my friends, playing jokes with me, that I'll get in their car and they'll be playing it. So, which is always fun.
I think that your next book should be a book about how to write, edit, copyright, and publish a book. See, you already have content.
Like the good, bad, and ugly of
Bad, and
writing
ugly.
and publishing a book.
Yeah. Well, Travis, I appreciate this, man. I thank you very much for giving your time to us today. I've learned a ton. I've really enjoyed talking to you. You're an impressive guy doing great things. I'm going to text you when Georgia's playing for the national championship next year and ask you at that time, hey, man, what day should I buy these tickets?
Yeah. When should I buy those? No, Josh, I certainly appreciate your time. I appreciate you doing this. You're doing it for the same reason I do, is to give back. And so I certainly appreciate that. And thanks for having me as well.
Yeah, man. Tell people where they can find you. You said reach out about books or whatever, Logitix, social media.
I mean, the easiest, probably easiest social media channel nowadays is LinkedIn. So Travis Apple, hopefully you'll find me there. And, I've got a website called 52weeksofhustle.com that you can listen to all the episodes and have the book. But yeah, easiest way, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and looking forward to connecting with everybody.
Good deal. Well, thank you all for listening. I know that y'all enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And as we say, until next time, keep chopping. Thanks, everybody.